Hey everyone. When we're on a non-regular scheduled time, it's usually not a good thing. Last time we did this, it was Keenan Allen being traded, and today it is the news that Justin Herbert did suffer an injury, not specifying when the injury was suffered, but the Chargers did announce today. I'll just read the announcement now. So let me get through this, and then we can talk about our reaction. So, from the Chargers themselves, they say following yesterday's practice, Justin Herbert was diagnosed with an injury to the plantar fascia in his right foot. Doctors have recommended approximately 2 weeks in a boot, followed by a graduated return to play protocol, with the expectation that he will be ready for the start of the regular season. Now, really quickly, because people are trying to figure out when this happened, when this might have happened, Daniel Popper discussed that Herbert didn't miss a rep with the ones yesterday in practice. Chargers say he was diagnosed after practice, so it's unclear when the injury actually occurred. Popper then went on to say that, and we saw this in videos yesterday, he had 3 different runs in yesterday's practice. He had a design keeper on the second play. He had a long scramble up the right sideline, and then a situational, I don't know what that abbreviation is, design run to the sideline in a later period. So all we know is that he has this injury. Not entirely sure exactly when it occurred, but it did occur. And it sounds like he's going to miss the rest of the offseason and the preseason. So, Alex, after hearing all that, your reaction just to the news right now?
Yeah, my initial reaction was obviously it sucks. I also like the Keenan Allen thing. I wish I was asleep instead of what we're doing right now.
Correct.
But I do think that, you know, they had to say this if he was obviously going to be in a boot on the sideline or in the facility. And this comes after, Harbaugh essentially on Monday saying, he's not going to say anything unless he essentially has to, like in this situation. So, as far as preseason and like training camp, I'm a little bit bummed, obviously, from a training camp perspective that, he was just kind of finding, how he gels with Lad McConkey and DJ Chark and all these guys. And it looked good. And so to not see that and to now see, Stick, Duggan, and sort of the backups, while the reps are good for them, it's obviously not good to, the offense and the chemistry that we want to see. So that's not good. As far as like re-aggravation risk, I'm a little bit concerned. Obviously, they said, minimum 2 weeks he's going to be out in a boot. Plantar fascias are a little like tricky to manage just because it's an inflammation injury. So you take essentially as many, as someone said in the chat here, probably you're looking at NSAIDs, platelet injections, steroids, time off on that foot in question. Which play it happened on, I don't know. It can be, I doubt it happened on one particular play rather than probably a buildup of some type of, inflammation that unfortunately was a little bit unlucky for Herbert. Obviously, you mentioned the 3 rushing plays in practice yesterday, which obviously were the first thing that came to my mind, now that we're kind of discussing this and he was diagnosed after practice. So in short, I'm not at like DEFCON 10 like Twitter is, but I am a little bit, concerned, not so much with missing the first game, but what this recovery looks like. And also, I guess, kind of what the next steps are here, because this can be a little bit of a tricky injury to deal with as opposed to, a sprain or something of that nature. And
Yeah.
Herbert is a big guy. He's 6'6", right? And, is putting a lot of pressure on that foot every time, he runs, every time he touches the ball. So, or plants his foot to even throw. So obviously you're talking about his right foot in particular too. So yeah, this is obviously not good.
No, it is not. So I'll start with the football aspect of it, and we talked about with chemistry. We had just started to see, and they just put on the pads, this gelling with basically an overhauled wide receiver room. Josh Palmer hasn't been out there as much, but he's the mainstay. But you have Lad McConkey and DJ Chark as 2 of your 3 main targets, and Quentin Johnston's doing his thing. And then behind them, of course, Brandon Rice, Cornelius Johnson, trying to get chemistry there, chemistry with the running backs, chemistry with everything, chemistry with the center. There's so much about this offense that is so new. And for him to not be able to be out there and throw in a full capacity or any capacity or play in any capacity is definitely a bummer. So regardless of whether he's available for week 1 or not, he's going to be missing now potentially up to a month or more of gelling with these new guys. So that's really unfortunate there. If he got hurt on a run, that's definitely a bummer. It's a bummer either way what happened, but I think now, I think Chargers fans, there was a quote, I forget from who, but then we saw yesterday all the running. Oh my God, Herbert's going to run more. And everyone's been enamored with how athletic Herbert actually is. I think it's done. I think the idea that he's going to run more this season needs to get thrown out the window. Of course, he'll have to scramble. He'll have to, go play football. But the idea that he's going to be more of a running back, I think you got to toss it out the window, because this would now be, even though it's not the regular season, 3 years in a row of a significant injury, the rib, the finger injury, the other finger injury, and now whatever this is. But again, not in the regular season so far, not affecting the regular season, but still a significant injury. And especially if it was him running on a scramble or a design run, whatever, I think you got to toss that part of the playbook out. So definitely unfortunate. Obviously, we're not going to spend an hour talking about this. This is not going to be an hour-long show, but definitely wanted to talk about it. What do you anticipate, if anything, the Chargers do from here regarding the backup quarterback situation?
I don't think they really are in a rush to bring anyone in. Certainly, like in a situation where Herbert returns to practice and then somehow like re-aggravates the injury, right? Then you're talking about something where it's like, okay, we need to probably go get like a backup quarterback or somebody, off of the market. I don't really know if a trade would be in question, but now it is just getting Easton Stick and Max Duggan and Bauman those reps. And now they are going to be starting that scrimmage against the Rams. So I'm sure that'll look great. But I do think that that's where we're at. I don't think it is like worst case scenario. Hey, like you need to go grab somebody off of the street right now. But this is, obviously suboptimal. You get more development for some of those guys down the roster, but this is obviously, kind of worst case scenario. I guess it eliminates preseason for him, like we said, which could be viewed as a good or bad thing. I doubt he was planning on playing much of the preseason anyway, given what Harbaugh's talked about with, just kind of minimizing injury risk at all, almost kind of in a Staley-like fashion in regards to potentially the preseason. So we'll see exactly what his plan is with starters there. But yeah, I think when they talk about the protocol to enter, replay or whatever they called it,
right?
That is essentially, being able to put a little bit more pressure, a little bit more force on that foot, every day without re-aggravating it after this 2-week period that he's in this boot. So that I think is, the primary thing to watch here. If you're seeing positive developments, starting on August 15th in that week when he presumably is out of this boot, or if it starts to be more of the same, or they start to be very quiet about how his recovery is going. So
yeah,
they say that's the other thing. They say minimum of 2 weeks. I'm not entirely convinced one way or the other that will be like that is what the timeline of the injury is. It could be more. So this is again like a very tricky thing to deal with.
So are you kind of anticipating, by the way, those who don't know, Alex is in medical school. So while not officially a doctor, he's more qualified to talk about it than most of the people in this chat, including myself. Do you anticipate this being more of like the start of the regular season is the best case scenario and then everything else is worse from there? Or do you think there's even an earlier return to play? And it's Herbert himself would elect to play, right? So it's up to the clearance really. Do you anticipate there even being a better scenario?
I don't see earlier return to play like in games. I certainly could see, early return to play like in practice. Like if we're talking again 2 to 3 weeks from now, right? It's all about just kind of how his body and how his foot and his toes, again, take to this. If he's feeling that pain, if he's not, feeling that pain, that's again why, like I was saying, it's a tough thing to manage. But I personally am not concerned about like missing week 1 yet. But we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. I also am like a little concerned about the statement the Chargers put out, because in there they don't say inherently plantar fasciitis. They say injury to the plantar fascia. I think that means plantar fasciitis. But again, we're dealing with a coaching staff that said that they were going to tell us as little about injuries as possible. So I don't know if that's
Could you just elaborate on why that might be concerning that they didn't specify there?
If it was something like, complete tear to the plantar fascia, then we're talking about something that's more than 2 to 3 weeks. If it's plantar fasciitis, like, we kind of expect, then that is about inflammation and how you deal with it, like we said. So, for right now, given that they've said that that's the timeline, I believe that it is plantar fasciitis. But again, that statement and how reluctant this coaching staff is to give out details, it is a little concerning.
Yeah, definitely concerning. Any way you slice it, certainly hope that they meant just the inflammation and not something significantly worse there. As far as backup quarterbacks go, if the Chargers choose to sign one, it's not much of a list. I'll tell you that right now, at least in terms of what this list has in front of me. It really is Brian Hoyer or Ryan Tannehill or Blaine Gabbert. Most of these guys are 35 plus, which is not a bad thing, and it's a backup quarterback. But if they really thought this was an issue, I think Ryan Tannehill kind of would fit. Not that they're going to run Arthur Smith offense, but I think some of the stylistically, some of it's kind of similar, so I could see that. But I think they are committed to Easton Stick. I don't think you bring him back unless you are somewhat committed to him as the actual backup,
Right.
and that he would be the guy. If they wanted a truer backup, whatever that means, it would have been a Tannehill or a Hoyer or whoever. So yeah, not great for sure. Do any of those names inspire anything in you at
Inspire? That's the word you just used.
What would you like me to? What pulls you back from the ledge, buddy?
Wait, hold on? I was trying to look at spot track. Tannehill, Hoyer, Gabbert, AJ McCarron, Matt Barkley, Trevor Siemian, DiNucci, Logan Woodside.
One of those names is fake, I think. I've never heard of Woodside before in my life.
Oh god. But no, for me, it's. I'll be interested to see. I guess we'll see how much trust, because Stick is going to get the starter reps regardless. Yeah. I would be curious, kind of like the chat says. Not that I think this would happen, but like if this injury is worse than they currently think it is, which we don't know, then do they explore something like a trade or a bigger type of signing? I don't know. Someone mentioned Trey Lance in the chat. I doubt it. But in those scenarios where this injury is worse than we could expect, then I think they'll kind of be pushed on the Stick question. I don't think they are like devoted to starting him week one if something happens. But I also think he's in pole position if that is the case.
Yeah. No, you guys have some very interesting options for backup quarterback. I don't think it's going to be Phillip Rivers, guys. Jimmy Garoppolo is currently suspended and with the Rams. They'll actually see him on Sunday. Who else? Kaepernick. I don't believe so. Is Colin Kaepernick younger than Tony Jefferson?
Tyler said that, not me.
I'm just curious. Because if you say it's an age thing, I will point you in a different direction.
Oh, jeez.
Carr, no thank you.
Someone said Mike White in the chat.
Hey, man, that Mike White beating the Bengals game 4 years ago was sick.
It was.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't, and maybe I'm just trying to be optimistic. I don't see this being the worst case scenario. So I don't think they'll go get a backup quarterback.
No.
If tomorrow they go sign Ryan Tannehill, I think we anticipate more of the worst case scenario. But yeah,
Cam, we'll get ready to bolt up, buddy.
No, I'm not doing the Cam Newton thing. We already did that and fought against that once. So I'm not going to do it again. I can't do it again.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, people are mentioning this in the chat. Ben Herbert is not infallible. Now, it is not that Ben Herbert is out there protecting 90 players and making sure that they are all safe from all football instances. But I think if we ever believed that there would be significantly fewer injuries to the Chargers, and maybe there will be, Unfortunately, we're not feeling so great right now with Rashawn Slater dealing with what he was dealing with, though I think he's back. And of course, Jamari, and then now with Justin Herbert. So it's so tricky. It feels like the most safe Herbert's been in practice, even though he's always the quarterback, so they don't hit him. But it's the gold jersey. It's there, and you have people holding up. What's the sign that's for no tackling? Is it thud?
Thud or pro? I don't remember which
Something
one.
like that. Yeah, there's a guy in practice.
It was thud no tackling in like parentheses under
yes. Right. I'm not saying this is Ben Herbert's fault, by the way, Abra, and those that are in the chat. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if we hoped that injuries would go bye-bye with this new regime, that is not the case. Football is still football. So,
and I mean, like, it's not just like, oh man, like, Herbert, himself has talked about soft tissue injuries and like addressing those, like with Christian Fulton, and his situation in Tennessee last year. I don't. This is not, you can get plantar fasciitis running, 3 miles outside, right? Like this is a overuse injury. I've had plantar fasciitis before. Like this is not, many people have, if you do any type of long distance cardio or something like that. It's an unlucky injury, right? This is not something you can just like prevent in that sense. So, I think Ben Herbert and the program he's setting up, as Quentin Johnston talked about it in his media availability, a lot of the players like it. That doesn't mean it's going to stop every injury. That's a very unrealistic expectation. And as we've seen, teams in recent years, we've seen the Chargers have top 10 injury luck, like in 2021, and we've seen them have bottom 5 injury luck. So
yep,
just, kind of how the season plays out.
Yep. All right. So last thing I guess we'll talk about, in the event that Herbert does miss week 1, and this requires at least 1 more week, if not more. So I'll go back to last year. Easton Stick, we'll go over his stats real quick. 144 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 5 fumbles. That wasn't necessarily on a rush. It's more just a fumble in the pocket or any kind of fumble.
Okay, wait. Can you do the numbers if you take out the Raiders game? What are the numbers if you take out the Raiders game?
In terms of fumbles?
Just stat line in general.
Okay, well, in terms of rushing, he only had 11.
Like the Raiders game in general is like,
he had 11 rushing yards and 2 fumbles against the Raiders. He had 257 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. All 3 of his touchdowns passing and his interception were against the Raiders.
Okay, so maybe we don't take out the Raiders stats.
Yeah, that's like removing the important one. So that was clearly not a good game. He did not throw any interceptions. He did not throw any touchdowns after that. About 225 yards per game against the Bills, Broncos, and Chiefs, which is certainly not an easy trio. I don't think the Chiefs were in full that game. I
think in general, it's like hard to take, because it was Raiders, Bills, the Broncos, and then the Chiefs game last year. Those are the 4 that he started. All of those games kind of had decreased value for the Chargers, particularly after, the firing of Brandon Staley. And so, right, like it's hard to know what to get from those games, right? Because even in that sequence, just as another example, right, you had Derwin James have his worst game of the year in that sequence, and Derwin James have his best game of the year in that sequence against Denver the following week, right? So it's just like, it's kind of hard to tell how bought in / not bought in the team was in general. And, Steven actually said he went back through the film recently, which God bless him. But he said that he thought Stick played better, than what his expectations kind of were, which I think is fair if you're just talking about, okay, he managed the game and it wasn't terrible, right? Like you're not expecting top tier backup from him. You're not expecting, the worst, Nathan Peterman type backup from him, right? You're expecting something in the middle, and that's ultimately what the Chargers got last year.
Yeah. I guess now that this is how I got here, Tom mentioned running backs. I don't know if that's particularly as relevant, although if they run it more, I guess I could see that. Does this now secure one of Max Duggan or Casey Bauman on the roster?
No, because the emergency third quarterback doesn't count against the roster. It counts against the opening 53, but wouldn't count against game day, right? That's how the emergency third works. or like
Sure.
I think that's how the new rule works. So like I think it is that they could keep, in theory, Duggan on the 53 or elevate him from the practice squad. They can do either with him, or in
Yeah,
this case,
true.
we'd be talking about Bauman.
Yeah.
So I don't think it locks it in. I think we'll see how bad this Herbert injury is. But yeah, I think it could lock him in on the roster, but also wouldn't impact them as much as like game day in previous years because they can
Yeah.
use the emergency third loophole and not count that player on game day, which I believe is the rule now.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we don't even have to have this conversation anymore and we get to week 1 or even sooner and Herbert's ready to go and good to go. Obviously, like I said, we're not going to make this a super long stream. I'm not going to talk about an injury we don't really know everything about. I haven't seen anyone update us on anything in social media or that's been reported. If there's any more clarification, so we'll probably wrap it up here pretty quick. Alex, any final thoughts on this or just a prayer circle?
Prayer circle. I'm concerned about this injury. I don't think it is, DEFCON 10, or wherever people are going to. But like I said earlier, I think this is a trickier injury to manage than, your casual knee sprain or something along those lines. So we don't know enough about it to freak out yet, but we also don't know enough about it, period. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. We'll see if they pursue any type of backup quarterback. I kind of doubt it unless, like I said, Herbert comes back and ends up re-aggravating this somehow. But I think, like Harbaugh said, they're going to play it as cautiously as they possibly can, given that, the whole season kind of hinges on the guy.
Yeah.
I do not think you will see him probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, even though I know they said minimum 2 weeks. We'll see if, they kind of end up sitting him out longer from practices than that. I don't think their desire right now is to just, get him back on the field as quickly as possible. They still have a margin for error in terms of time here with 5 weeks left to the Raiders, right? So if you give him 3 weeks instead of 2, that's not the end of the world and probably would be better in the long term. But we'll see how they navigate it.
Yeah, so as of right now, and Alex just mentioned, the first game of the season is Sunday, September 8th. So they do have, 3 preseason weeks, then a week in the middle, then ramp up to that game. So hopefully, I guess in 4 weeks he returns, so we could at least have that 1 week of practice leading up to the game. The good news is, Raiders secondary isn't the greatest, but you're now week 1. It's Max Crosby, and he did get hurt the last time they played the Raiders. Off after that interception, I believe. So hoping he can get back. Like you said, the entire season depends on him. If Herbert misses any time, I'm just going to assume the Chargers lose that game because I don't think Harbaugh can do enough coaching to make this all work. So yeah, hoping for the best, prayer circle. I hope it is quote unquote just the inflammation and not something more severe. Well, that's it, guys. Hopefully I don't have to talk to you guys again about this and that all things will be good. See ya.